Quiet on the set. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy, your not so retired friend in genealogy. Welcome to Myrt's Book Club. This is a new adventure for us. What we're planning to do is to meet 15 minutes after Mondays with Myrt concludes every other week. And we're taking a book, in this case, right now, it's Mastering Genealogical Proof by Dr. Thomas W. Jones. And unlike a normal book club that meets monthly, we meet basically twice. Occasionally, there'll be a third meeting in a month, just depends. And we're going through a couple of chapters at a time. Now, in order to let me pull this up. This is our homework, and I will make this a full screen thing here. In order to make this, yes, we are focusing on a particular book. In order to protect copyright, we are not doing anything more than quoting perhaps a sentence from the book at hand. And somebody pointed out that I needed to explain we have 4 types of participants: the panelists that have been pre-selected, who are the ones who submit homework and show up. And then we have me, the host. My job is to collate their homework into one printable item. Let me give you the link to the homework right here, 1 second, because you'll want to have a copy of this and follow along with us. And I see some of the usual suspects. Okay, it should open. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we'll work on that. The attendees are you folks who are watching us live, and we've got Bobby out there and Cindy Bray. Monta says there's a little issue with that link. We'll work on that. But there are 11 of you. You're participating and get to participate live, which is something that our 4th category of a participant in book club, and that's a viewer who can watch the recording. Yes, they will have the link to homework, and they can follow along. And the homework link will also be added to the description of the video, so that we're trying to correlate everything together. So let me see. Tell me, I put the link out. Try that link, Monta, see if that works. Anybody else having trouble with the link? And while we're dealing with that, let me pull up. The first person to submit homework was my good neighbor, the world's greatest neighbor, Maria. Although we both moved away from Utah, we still continue our friendship. And Ellen, who's a panelist on Mondays with Myrt, doing double duty. I really appreciate you too. And then Deneen is here, and Deneen has already taken the more advanced study group of books. And that's what we are trying to do, is spotlight a book to encourage people to take that more intensive study group where every participant submits homework. It's a big deal. They meet every other week for X number of weeks. Betty Lou's saying, good, the link came up. So good. I'm glad that worked, because I want y'all to have the homework. Now, we do have Karen here today. She's one of our pre-selected. She looks like she's in the dark tunnel there. We'll have to get a light on this side. This week was not a homework week for her, which is totally fine. So I'm going to have you off in the wings. You can still type in the chat, and we can pick it up here. And Monta says, yes, she got the homework. That makes me happy. All right. So I want to tell you something really cool that's happened here. Cousin Russ and I couldn't believe it. We've done a number of those very intense study groups, and we've never assigned anything more than the chapter. In this case, it's chapters 1 and 2 that our panelists could choose from. And invariably, in all the years that we did very intense study groups, sometimes we did 2 study groups a week of different topics, different books. Yeah, never, never assigning a specific concept from a chapter, but telling the panelists, pick one little concept from that one of these 2 chapters that kind of resonates with you, that has, that you can use your own research to illustrate the point that the author's making, in this case, Dr. Jones. And only 3 times out of all the years and of 90-minute study groups did we have panelists who picked the same quote. But those 3 had completely different takes on the subject. And that's the miracle of this, is I don't know what you are going to respond to and what resonates with you. I love compiling this homework, and I even have a printed out copy. So we're going to do 5 minutes of let me explain a little bit more about study group, showing you the first few pages of the homework. Okay, so and it will always be a Google Doc. This one includes the preface with how to participate, how to observe copyright. This is where panels happen to submit homework. Parent submitted homework, which has been, I can correct my typographical errors as we speak. Anyway, then here's the schedule. And one thing you want to consider is that when you come back to the Google Sheet or you're at Dear Myrtle's blog post, I will be adding on to this. For instance, this is actually our second meetup. Last time was all informational, and there was no handout. But here's the link to the video discussion. Here's today's chapter assignments with the titles of those chapters. And it starts on page 3 and continues through page 9 of this handout. And I will then change this page and add the link once we're through with this video discussion. I might not get to it till tomorrow, given what I have to do today. We're rearranging office space here in the house. Okay, and so this is how it will go. We'll go then to the first break, and I use this highlighter so that I don't skip over somebody's homework. And Maria, you are first on the deck, so let me pull you up. And I'm going to have just you and I speaking for a little while, okay?
Okay.
So your quote that you provided from Dr. Jones is that genealogy is a multiple disciplinary endeavor, meaning it's knowledge-based, borrows from fields like anthropology, economics, genetics, history, law, mathematics, sociology. I'm going to add cartography, language. In fact, you added language. Talk to me about how you first started out.
I first started out, my mother-in-law had a request from a cousin to get my husband's grandmother's birth certificate, because she was smuggled from Germany, or from Poland into Germany. Actually, it was Russia, Poland into Germany, and they were trying to find out where that was. And so I
remember you, when we first met, we sat on my doorstep there. You walked 2 doors up, and when you said Poland, I'm like, good luck, Maria. You were sitting right there on that side of me.
That's right.
Because for the longest time, records from Poland were not available. No. And then you have challenges of history.
Yeah, because Poland did not really exist as a country in the 1800s, but I didn't know that. I kind of missed that in history class. And so it's like I I learned by degrees. I mean, first I was introduced to a database, but I still didn't understand that there was 3 different partitions. I didn't necessarily understand that all the records could be in different languages. There's so many things I didn't understand. But it was interesting how even just little bits that I learned along the way opened up my genealogy door even wider, or more genealogy doors that I could go down and seek.
Well, the first discipline was an online database. That was the first resource that you ran into. And
And see, a lot of people that go in just think about ancestry, they just think about family search or a few things, but there are a lot of other databases out there, and these were set up by Polish enthusiasts at first, and then they got backing and more people, and there's actually several Polish databases out there, but I didn't even come to mind that could possibly be a thing to even go search for.
I know you're thinking like I did when I did research on, I have a lot of ancestors from England. I also have Germany, and I was like, I could never do that. I don't even know the language, let alone they had a slightly different character set because of calligraphy. Not that it's Cyrillic, which is completely different characters.
Right.
But I would look in the catalog of Family Search for microfilm for churches in the area where the ancestor lived. That made sense, right? But I didn't realize that Family Search wasn't the end all.
Right.
I didn't realize that Ancestry, well, I started way before we had websites, but that Ancestry doesn't have it all. Find My Past doesn't have it all. There's a variety of resources that you can call upon. And but I didn't know that at the beginning either. So in that regard, I think we're typical beginners.
Yeah. And I think even taking classes like from GRIP and things like that, where you got to understand location, you got to understand law, you got to understand all these different aspects. Like you mentioned maps. There's this great site that when you go onto called MAPA, that it will tell you if you type in a parish, it will tell you what parish did they report it to, which governing place. So that's the place you go look for the records.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be different for different localities.
Yeah.
They have different names for it.
Exactly.
For instance, I wanted to look at the manuscript collection in Iowa, not knowing that the actual state library, which is what I was used to dealing with in other states of the United States, in Iowa, it's the Historical Society of Iowa that is the de facto state library.
Right.
So, and that's just in the U.S. And we need to think globally. Yeah. Not all of our ancestors are. Yeah.
One thing I did not put in the homework. One thing I did put in the homework that I probably should have put in the homework that has really aided me is learning how to join different social groups that can help you and network. And so somebody suggests I join a Facebook group that does Polish research, and that opened all kinds of windows, including a online Polish class. And that really helped me recognize that the end of the Polish names will change depending on who's talking. And for a long time now, I thought they made a mistake in the death record of one of the fathers because the son Christian was named Christina. And I'm like, what? It's because he was being owned by the father. His last name was changed to the genetic form and adds an A at the end.
And so we would have misconstrued it.
Like, well, is he a girl or is he a boy? You know?
Yeah. And that's just a peculiarity of the language with which you were unfamiliar at the time. Right. Betty Lewis saying, Cindy's List is also an important resource. So is the Internet Archive. So is, no end to the resources that are available. And we're we just happen to be mentioning a few online resources.
Right.
Um, Here's something else. Learning about history and looking at maps. Um, so this place that you ultimately found, where this dear woman, it's a beautiful portrait, absolutely beautiful. She looks friendly, doesn't she? I mean, somebody said you had to not smile. No, they had to hold the pose for a while because of the technology. It wasn't a click and the photo's taken. Whose sound is echoing? Oh, Maria's is, because she's in a rental while her home is being built. And
Well,
so
and
not in
the
her
wind
normal
is
studio.
blowing. The wind is blowing 25 miles an hour.
Yeah,
It's
that's
crazy.
just what it is, Bobby. But at least the miracle of being able to talk with people from throughout the world is pretty darn cool. So, yeah, so the the spot where she was born was under the jurisdiction of Poland
Russia.
lately,
Right.
Germany,
She was in Russia, Poland.
Russia, Poland. Okay. So I've got a place in Germany where it depended. Was France over the line? You know, they wanted to own the Rhine River because that was a major transportation route. And then, you know, the Poles would come over, the Russians would come over because they wanted to have that transportation route of the Rhine River. And, you know, my poor people, the wisers, were stuck in the middle. So it's who had jurisdiction at what time as to where the boundary line was. People lived their lives, but we need to find a map that's appropriate to the area. And you did mention in your homework that you've been able to validate paper trails with DNA. So good on you. Let me just ask, where have you been? Where have you done testing with DNA?
Well, we tested originally with Ancestry, but I moved all the DNA over to Find My Past, uh, all the other places that would let me upload. And it
Hmm.
was actually through
Probably My Heritage.
My Heritage that the cousin came through.
Yeah.
But we uploaded everywhere I could put it, and then we also put it on 23andMe. We put it everywhere.
Yes. Um, I mentioned during Mondays with Myrt a little bit earlier that outside the U.S., My Heritage is particularly strong, and something like 80% of the adult population in Norway, for instance, has tested their DNA with My Heritage. It's autosomal, like Ancestry. Um, and that's helped Mr. Myrt with some of the collateral cousin relationships. Well, thank you very much. I do want to mention that a couple of interesting things from your homework. So let me pull that up. And I hope you all are seeing this okay. I think if I zoom in one more time, it's too big. Maybe not. Notice that she used Microsoft Word and did the footnotes. That works beautifully, guys, those of you who are my panelists. And but notice this interesting thing. I'm using the paper version, but she's not able to give me a page. She's looking at the preface of the Kindle version at about the 3 to 4% version. Those of you who are accustomed to reading books on Kindle, it'll tell you what percentage you are through the book. So that's her citation. That's why there's not a page number. Um, I thought this was interesting. We didn't mention the Boston University course specifically. You just were giving a smattering of some of the genealogy classes you've taken where they've emphasized the genealogical proof standard. And then um, when it got to this one, Polish roots, um, I'm I'm thinking, didn't I give you that book?
You gave me one with some great maps in it. The
Yeah,
atlas.
okay, yeah. But here you are, yes. Here you are in the middle of moving, or wait, you've moved in a temporary facility. So the reality is that it's perfectly okay to make a discursive note that your copy of this book is, you can't find the location. Now, I could have gone in and typed Baltimore, Maryland, and corrected that for you. But I didn't want to because I wanted this to show up. That's perfectly okay. That lets people know you could contact the author to get that additional information. And then, so this is the date that you viewed it? No.
No,
That's
that
the
was
date it was revised. So that actually belongs up here because the very last thing should be the web address and then a space, then a colon, and the date you accessed it. But it's okay. I don't care. You've got all the elements there. But if you were submitting to NGSQ or something, you'd probably have to rearrange. So thank you for your homework. Yes. Betty Lou says people need to remember that not all people in Europe can use Ancestry DNA. It's also very unpopular, like in Spain, even though some testing is being done, that's considered inappropriate to test to find out about Ancestry. Yeah. All right. Well, let's switch positions and bring Ellen up on the stage. So, Ellen, you were intrigued by the concept of direct and indirect evidence from Dr. Jones,
Right.
And that it's going to take a variety of documents that indicate either directly these are the parents of so and so,
Right.
or indirectly where you have to draw an inference.
Mm-hmm.
And the other good point that you brought up was that the source is the container for it, not the information that's in there.
Yeah, because I always sort of thought of sources as each record
Yeah.
are sources for the what I'm looking for. But so that was kind of a aha moment.
Well, and I think that's a good point to bring up because you can have a death record that has direct evidence about the death, the cause of death, the date of death. It's signed by the coroner or the physician. And then you actually have direct evidence, but from a secondary source about who the parents might be.
Right.
Because, the parents may have been deceased, so it isn't like it's the mama saying, I gave birth to this kid. And we look for information items within a document, within a source, that are the most reliable to answer that research question. So the one is, what was the death date and the cause? The other question could be, who are the parents? And you had a particularly challenging scenario, and I did a lot of my notes added in purple to yours.
Okay.
Because I was relating a lot to what you said. I'm really excited about your homework because it gives us lots to think about. Let's talk a little bit about your paragraph about authored works and the actual record.
Okay.
What's an authored work?
So my understanding is authored work is maybe even somebody's thoughts that they put down on a page. Mm-hmm. That's an authored work.
Yes, it could be a letter that somebody writes saying, I was there for, I attended the wedding and the canapes were horrible, but the punch was great.
Right.
And it was just a letter to the sister that, in the 1840s that couldn't make the trip because she'd gone out west. And that may be the only evidence or the only information item that gives an approximation of the date of the marriage, because there's the date of the letter. And they'll say, last Wednesday I attended, and there are websites we can go to look up what that date and then the previous Wednesday might be.
Right.
So Maria is asking, is a journal considered an authored work? Yes. Actually, our to-do lists or our research logs are authored works. It's not the original document of the death certificate or the marriage certificate, the marriage return that the minister or the magistrate signs that I joined these two in marriage. It's somebody else other than the officiant is letting you know about something. Let's think of some other examples. Maybe I can pull Deneen and Maria and Karen up. What are other examples of authored works? Just raise your hand, I'll call on you. And okay, Deneen, you got to turn on your mic. You muted yourself. It automatically mutes you when you're in the wings and unmutes you when I bring you up on the stage.
Oh, good, because I thought you'd hear me shouting to my husband to bring.
I saw that you were talking to him, but I didn't hear any shouting because it's automatically.
Oh, this is great. It's a whole new learning curve. And let's see.
So a different type of authored work.
This absolutely perplexes me to this is a distinction that's hard for me to make.
Good. See, thank you, Ellen.
So I think, and that we were talking about letters as being an authored work, that at letters and journals and notes. A book is an author, certainly is authored. So now I see. Okay. Mariah has something to say.
Yeah, Maria.
So like I think like family histories or even histories on counties or areas, those are also authored works.
Yeah, the mug books that were typically written after the U.S. Civil War started about 1880, 1890 and continued to about 1920. People paid to get their bio in that book. A city directory, which goes back to the early 1800s, has nothing to do with telephones, obviously. That's an authored work. Somebody had to go around and compile who's living where at this address and etc. That's not the land record that shows that person owns that piece of property. Betty Lewis saying
compiled work. Could a compiled work of direct evidence is still an authored work.
Yep, because there can be, it's one step removed from the original, sometimes more, and that distance can be a human error. I'm getting to you, kiddo. Just relax. Can only do so much. When that distance occurs, you can have an error. But it could be partially accurate. Mm-hmm. It's a clue. Okay. Let's see what you've got, Karen.
So how would you do, so say you have a wedding and you compile it and you're digitally, so if you're doing something video, like, is that considered authored or does that fall under a different realm?
Well, if we're talking about the wedding letter, that is, and I've got the letter, or if all we're doing is talking about the wedding last Wednesday, that's compiled.
Okay.
It's an authored work. But if you're making a video and you show, here's the marriage license, that doesn't mean they got married. Then you show the marriage return from the minister, and sometimes it can appear 3 or 4 months later if the minister's disorganized. That's a really good question. Then you are referring to documents that were created at the time, maybe mailed into the clerk of the court late. And that we are assuming that it is our couple in question. There could be somebody else. Have you got people like, you got an ancestor named Conrad Weiser, and he has 3 wives named Elizabeth. Well, which Elizabeth are we talking about? So it's iffy. You have to do more than just show those 2 things to convince me that this is the couple, the marriage couple we're talking about. And that's something that happens in Ellen's homework. Yeah. You know, a compiled genealogy mostly has pedigree charts and family group sheets, or a narrative that shows the parents and the children, and then they had children, you know. And very few documents are shown there just because of space limitations. That's why the internet's cool, because a person could create that all in the way of a blog. But it's their current thinking, and that is a compiled genealogy with some pretty darn convincing documents that may prove, in fact, this is the correct couple. So yeah, an index or a transcription can also be authored works. When your local genealogy or family history society goes through and walks the cemetery, takes a picture of the tombstone, and then they compile it in a book, that's an authored work. Let's talk about Find a Grave. Find a Grave initially was just the tombstone. Here's the cemetery, here's the tombstone, and here's the type transcript of what the tombstone says. But they have added all these family relationships, which is not always accurate. When it's just the photo and you can see the photo of the tombstone and you can see the transcription, that part of that container for that ancestor, I'm using the word container because of Dr. Jones and you, Ellen, that part can be accurate. And the other parts about he was married to so-and-so and she's buried over there, not always next to him, and their children are these people. People have messed up on my ancestors and I can't seem to correct them. Somebody has their alarm. It could be me. So this is a big deal, figuring out is somebody needs to turn off their phone. It's okay. All right. Records also need a thought. Okay, so Maria, talk about this for a minute, and then we're going to get back to our two homeworks left to go.
Well, there's been sometimes I've come across a death record and I felt like some of the information was incorrect. And it was because the person giving the information didn't really know the parents of the deceased.
Yeah, they don't always know their in-laws. Maybe like my in-laws had both passed away by the time I married Mr. Myrt. So the container can have information that could be true, like death information, and could be questionable. It depends on the informant. That's an interesting concept. All right, let me go back to the homework here. Okay, and we'll bring this back. I have to add it and go like this. Sometimes we can't tell, it's undeterminable, the motivation of the informant. Now, let's just use some of the examples here. So you want to know who the parents are of, what was the question?
Oh, William Beaton.
Yeah.
That was my question a long time ago.
Okay.
Didn't realize it was going to take quite this long.
Yeah. And so you thought it was William Beaton Sr., which is a beginner definitely thinks, oh, same place, and it's an older person, same name, it's got to be his dad. That doesn't always happen, because
No.
if William is a name that has come down through 3 or 4 generations, and you're talking about Grandpa William, his children, when they start having boys and they love Grandpa William Beaton, you can bet they're going to name their kid William. And some of those, and so the men, the male children who are thinking back on their grandpa, they're going to have that same Beaton surname. And so you actually have to do something we talk about in Deneen's homework called creating a timeline. Figure out which William is which.
Yeah.
But you worked on a couple of interesting things, and you'll see that I've added a few things. First of all, you looked at the 1881 census of Canada at Ancestry, and they are citing, and I would only add that I got a different view of the abstract because I had trouble pulling in your PDF.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'd literally forgotten that that's an issue, and I really needed in Word.
I mean, when I first started, this is what I would have looked at, and this is what I thought, oh, I found my family, this is it. But
because there's a William and there's a Willie.
And but it evolved. It's evolved.
Right. And then you looked at the next 10 years, and we always do that. We take the most recent census and work back through them to see if we can find any semblance of the family. We may notice where older daughters are no longer in the household, older sons are no longer in the household because they're in their own households.
So now William Sr. is deceased. Frederick, who is his brother, was his brother in the last census, is now he's a domestic for them.
Yeah. Intriguing. And I did this, I thought it was kind of interesting too. You'll notice we never worry about the age, particularly of women. We also don't changing over 10 years. She should be, is Mary the same as Maggie? No.
No.
But Frederick is 24 and now he's only 31. We don't know what we don't know. Here's a Georgina, 15. And this is a Georgina who's 14. She only aged 1 year. That part of that lets me know it's possible that the informant was not a family member, could have been a neighbor.
Right.
I like the later years in England where the family fills out that form. So now I want to talk to you about this. This is a letter that you received. It looks a little fuzzy to me, but I tried to zoom in.
It's just a screen grab.
Say again?
It's a screen grab.
Yeah, I hear you. So what you have is a letter written to you from the Provincial Archives of Alberta.
Right.
Now that's pretty authoritative.
Right.
And the original citation about it, which is not, and I added not pictured, is that you apparently looked in a marriage index where it listed a William Beaton who would have been born in about 1903.
Yeah.
And that it was an index. But this document itself
is
it's not the index.
No.
Even it's not. This is what you all call a transcript. I think of a transcript as word for word. And I would see this as an abstract of part of it where it's just little bits and pieces. And so another citation for what we're actually looking at doesn't even list the bride or groom, but it does list a registration district, a record number. There's that 390 of 1903. So that to me means that there are 1,903 images in the record set, not a birth year of 1903. When they say that this guy's 28,
no,
based on what year?
This was from the 1903 record set, and it was item number 390.
Okay, so in 1903, So they didn't give you a very good report.
I believe that's what the situation was. I can't remember now.
Well, and they didn't tell you who the bride was.
Oh, I have another page. I just showed the first page because I was talking about William.
Okay. So, okay. So let me talk to you about this.
Okay.
This is an authored work, even though it comes from an official source, because it's not they didn't take a digital image or a Xerox photo, a facsimile of the actual birth register that shows the marriage took place.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of government agencies that I know of in the US will not give you the original facsimile. They will give you a transcript, or they will type something up in that moment, and it has an error in it. It's not the original. Challenging.
This is how it was in 2005. Now I can actually see the original, or I have the original, I believe.
Oh, good.
But yeah.
And it is important to look at the bride's parents, because sometimes the bride's father, when he passes away, will give money to his daughter, whatever her name was, who and he will say, let's say, what was her name?
Oh, his wife. Yeah, this is William. Sorry, this is my William, and so in this case, it says that his father and mother are Ann Roth and William Beaton, and yet that's not.
It's not what. It's what was reported on the form.
Yeah.
It was not accurate. Why
I don't
do things not be reported on the form, do you think? Let me throw that out to people. Janine, Karen, Maria, I'm pulling you back up on the stage. Oh, I took you away. Let me put you back up on the stage. Why might things not get reported?
If they're eloping.
Okay, eloping. Yeah, and it could be reported, their age could be totally different. If they do a Gretna Green. Yeah.
Yes.
What if let's just imagine that my father had died, let's say in World War II, but I was conceived during their wedding. And then the only person I knew as a father was my stepfather. And in fact, he adopted me. I would kind of be wondering, should I put my adopted name there or my actual birth name? So that's a reason why it could be off, right? And I'm using myself. That is not the scenario. But I do that just to not put anybody, the spotlight on somebody. Valerie's saying this example of the Alberta letter is exactly why whenever I wrote for a vital record, I always asked for an exact copy of the record from the record book, not abstracted onto a pre-printed short form.
Back in that day, that's all they would give you.
At the time.
Yeah.
Yep. Now you've got the original.
Right.
So if we had, if this was all that you had in 2005, that's all that you had in 2005. And you entered the information, let's just say theoretically, you entered the information into your genealogy database because that's what you thought at the time. Yeah. And then new information comes along. And yes, I know we have another homework still to do. These are not easy topics to get through, guys. But that's why I only wanted 3 or 4 homework assignments submitted. And that's why I don't have 12 panelists. Yeah.
So then what happens is you present this information to your aunts and uncles, because even though you've interviewed them and whatever, and then they say, oh yeah, but didn't we, he was adopted.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Yeah. But
and then that's when DNA comes involved.
And the whole thing is interesting because you're on this pathway to discovering who are the parents and the grandparents, etc. And sometimes we find out because of the collateral lines, because they're the ones that got the family Bible and you got the photo. And because of being in conversation, because you're doing this work, which is a joyous work to do, then people say, oh, yeah, which would have helped if they told you in 2005. That's for darn sure. I get it. All right. Thank you very much. And
so it's really about a collection of evidence that keeps building, until you maybe get the answer.
absolutely.
So it's a simple question.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. So we just have a few more minutes to go, and we're going to talk about Denine's homework. So let me let Ellen go to the wings. So you have you've been taking online classes with the
NGSQ
quarterly, and I added a footnote there. And that is that it's a scholarly, peer-reviewed, because a lot of people, you and I know what NGSQ stands for. It's for the National Genealogical Society Quarterly. And it's not a perfect citation. I could be correcting it. I did something here. I think this goes over here. Let me put it here, of the society, comma, and organizational subscribers and when it's published and where you can get to it. In fact, there is a discursive note that the index is searchable for free. Here's the link. And I couldn't remember if it was searchable to non-members. Yeah. And so I went to the website last night. That's why it took me 3.5 hours to compile all this. A lot of it was dealing with a PDF. The other part was this. Mm-hmm. But thank you for your citations. You had multiple challenges because of wives.
Yes.
I've only made a bullet here to talk about Carolyn Sterrett Todd, who is missing, and why you think wife number 2 shows up. It was a logical error. Explain that.
Well, the logical errors that this started trying to trace a silver spoon that we'd found that would have probably possibly been a dowry for Carolyn Sterrett Todd, and to find. But when I went to Family Search, and I start with Family Search now, I've used to do everything on Ancestry. But I start because I inadvertently created a duplicate entity for my husband, the living husband. I thought any rate, and he was already in there. And so I always look everybody up first on Family Search. And so I'm looking for Caroline. She's there, but she's not linked as the mother of James' ancestor. She's not linked. This marriage is not there. But he has 4 other wives that he's linked to, that Horace Langdell is linked to. And I'm like, are these people smoking something? Or what is going on here? But I resort to the timeline to sort this all out. And I was able to find a record for Caroline, for the marriage, and they made Family Search had a mistake because the 1860 census listed the second wife, and that was presumed to be the mother of the 4-year-old boy.
Very typical. Yeah.
Then that was the typical mistake. And any rate, so there were a number of things that didn't make sense, and I turned to the timeline to help my addled brain sort this out. And I'm just using the date, the type of event, what was the key person, the place, and then I make my notes. And so this can also work as a reminder as, oh, I should check out this thing here, or this is suspicious. I need more information, like
Mhm.
Horace's military.
Absolutely.
So this was how I got on this big quest.
Well, I love this. This is the best way to figure out, like, here's their marriage of Horace and Caroline.
Mhm.
Then they have Austin being born. And then you figured out, well, Carolyn passes away. Now we have a marriage a little about a year and a half later to Lucy. That's the one that was reported incorrectly as being the mother of
Mhm.
Austin. But because you did this timeline, you could figure out that that's what it is.
Yeah,
What
it really helps. And it's what uh, Jones is talking about as the reasoning. It's
Mhm.
like the real simple-minded way of reasoning, and I don't have to worry if it's discursive or inductive or whatever.
Yes.
Just looking, it does it pass the smell test. What is the order here? Do I
Yeah.
need more information? Um, so that's, I wanted to include that as my way of coping with.
This is brilliant. And you can do this in Google Sheets, you can
Mm,
do it in Excel, you can do it as a table in Microsoft Word, you can do it as a table um, in Google Docs. I tend to use Excel because I taught that for 432 years in the post-secondary corporate world. And then I would copy and paste. I did a screen capture of this so that I can't go in and edit this. But you've highlighted the important points, and they can be different points depending on the question that you have at the time.
mhm.
So this technology of you've got the timeline for the daddy, and then what's happening with other individuals in his family, and then refer to it on the next challenge regarding that family. Don't have to reinvent the wheel.
So I was able to solve one minor mystery on the wives. I thought I had two different people, but they were the same woman. One record was her birth name, and then one, but she married under her widow, under her name as a widow. So
Yes,
she had married Horace. So
yes. So yeah,
good
that
call.
if we all kept our maiden names, life would be so much easier for genealogists. It's a little late in the game to enforce that times 120 countries throughout the world, but I get that. So, folks, do you now see when you look at the homework that's been submitted by Maria and Ellen and Deneen, how some very smart points have been illustrated um, by these panelists, and they have to do with points that Dr. Jones brings up in his book, Mastering Genealogical Proof. Now, I like hearing, I mean, this is written as a workbook, and Dr. Jones has his own samples to illustrate his points that he's making. And each chapter in this book has homework assignments. We figured out right off the bat that we could not use his samples because that is his research and his thinking. And then, we met with the legal genealogist, and in the meantime, I thought about this idea of what if my panelists brought their own research to the forefront, because you are speaking passionately based on your research experience. Like Ellen knew that in 2005, that's what she knew. And she's told us about how now records are available, like the actual marriage record is available on, I mean, heavens, that was 20 years ago.
I know.
And in the meantime, she's talking with family members because she's the crazy nut that does genealogy in her family. And then that sparks conversations. So all of this is good. And this is what I like capturing. Now, there are Gen Proof study groups that are being held elsewhere that take that chapter in just one chapter and use that homework to see if you can follow along with Dr. Jones's thinking. But I think in 3 different ways, our homework submitters have shown us some very important points to improve our genealogical research. And I think you deserve a round of applause. Way to
I
go.
enjoyed it.
Very proud of you. Yeah. All right. I am going to do a giveaway tool, and here's why. This is going to be the hashtag. And here's why I want to give this away. It's a quick sheet. It's available on Kindle. And what it is it's Elizabeth Shown Mills quick sheet, your stripped bare guide to citing sources. And it really is, what is that document that you have in hand? Is it an authored work? Is it a is it a compiled genealogy, but they have kind of an interesting actual facsimile of the marriage record? Is it a letter from a creditable resource like the Department of Archives for the province of Alberta? Or is it information they've abstracted and we can only see page 1? So we don't really know the answer to how it applies. And that's how I arrived at a in the way of Ellen's homework, scrolling back. That's how I arrived at this second citation with a note, no listing for bride and date of marriage. The fact that it was 1903 came into play because the index was for 1903, but it wasn't part of this compilation. And poor Ellen would have had to give me 5 more pages of homework in order to add them in. And sometimes that may be called for. She could just slap it in there. It would help. But I'm not expecting our panelists to do that. I really just want some pages with documents that we can look at, the timeline, this inspiring photo, as opposed to just text on the page to illustrate the point. Yes, to do the giveaway tool, Cindy knows what to do. You have to type in Myrt's Book Club, no apostrophe, but you do have to have the # in front. And so far I have 2 entries, and I will be giving away this quick sheet. Now, while we're doing that, let me mention what it is we're going to be doing next month, or in 2 weeks it is next month. Let me pull up the calendar. So, here we go. So in our February 3rd session, we're going to do chapter 3 and 4, where we're talking about the first 2 elements of the genealogical proof standard, which are thorough research, only now they call it search, and source citations. Okay. Bobby can't hear. She's lost her sound. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's see how many people we have in the giveaway tool. I have 4 entries. The thing about this particular quick sheet from Elizabeth Shown Mills, I've got it right here, and I just spilled it. Okay, I have it right here. It's what am I actually holding? Well, not this. It's a 2-sided quick sheet. Were we actually holding that letter that was from the provincial archives? Are we actually holding in our hand the actual facsimile of the marriage return, where the officiant says, I did join these 2 in marriage on this particular date? Or are we looking at the marriage application where the groom says, these are my parents, and the bride said, these are my parents? You know, there's a lot of different types of marriage documents. So it's really, as Elizabeth says, what is it I'm holding in my hot little hands, or digitally if it's on, if you've captured it and are going to attach it to the marriage event in an ancestor's profile. All right, let's see how many more we have. We've got 17 watching. Let's see. So we only have 4 entries, so please give it a good quick look. You've already got the quick sheet, and you also have the one for historical proof. And mine's right up here. I don't know what I'm going to do. Mr. Myrt's changing offices, and I get to have my own office instead of sitting in the middle of this den and confined to 4.5 feet with a disaster around me. So I have to find a place to put that because it's got to be right here next to me. Okay, hi PJ. All right, so we're going to do the drawing, and here's what you have to do. Let me give you my email, dearmyrtle@gmail.com. And if you are in another country, I mean, I can send you the equivalent through Venmo or PayPal. There we go. There's my email going out. All right, this is the last call. I'm going to hit the draw button. I still have Bobby Christensen, she did tell me, I still owe you something, but you didn't tell me which book, hon. So you've got to write back to me. Like if you want the Kindle version or the hard copy. That was from something before. And I want to be honest with you and send it over to you. Okay, here we go. We're going for the drawing. Let's see who wins. Hi, Cindy, you got it. Oh, Karen did. Okay, Karen's one of our panelists. So Karen, write to me and tell me if you want it sent to you. I like the laminated copy. I just like having it right there. I can prop it up next to my screen, look at what the suggestion is for the typing, and actually type on the screen. So good, we have a winner. And that will be of the Elizabeth Schoen Mills Quick Sheet, Your Stripped Bare, that's kind of cute, guide to citing sources. Okay. All right. Panelists, thank you so much. Thank you, those of you who managed to leave Mondays with Myrt and come over here. It's a little bit of a scramble for us panelists. It's a different link to get into the StreamYard from those of you who are watching on the YouTube side. But there's really nothing left to say, but I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy. Happy family tree climbing, everybody. That's a wrap.